I thought about that, and I thought, well, as I look out, really, you're family, and you've always been family. And I think I asked Lee, I said, I was here in 1971, and when had the old building, and Lee and Dave Shipp were here, but others, Sharon Weber, the Palmers, the Dorns, eventually the Clarks, the Putterballs, and 100 others. Family is incredibly important to me. I just rejoice in being with you this morning. Want to share some thoughts with you. And I'm looking for a clock, and I don't see a clock, and so I'm not able to tell time.
Next to the screen. Look left. One of your left.
Okay, there's a little one in the corner. So we'll be out here by 2 o'clock easy. And so, I shared this lesson with our group at East Tacoma, and I talked to Bill about it, and he said, would you share it here? The first half is really going to be the theory of it. Here's what Job did. The second half is going to be the application of it. How in the world do we do what Job did? And for that reason, I'll be moving fairly rapidly through, particularly the scriptures on Job, because we tend to know them. If you say, Paul, I couldn't write so fast, I gave the hard copy to Bill. If you say, I want the scriptures, I didn't get down, see him, they'll make you photocopies and you're good. So I thought about this principle. If this particular one was the last and most important sermon that you would ever hear in life, what would you ask it to be? Well, I thought about that, and I thought, well, it could be different things. What about love? Well, boy, you find that critical. It's central to the gospel of Christ. God so loved the world. Or we might think it's an area of hope. There's faith, hope, and love. Then I thought about faith. Faith is absolutely essential. How do you figure that, Paul? Well, this is just part of a picture in astronomy, the part of the bridal veil. It's beautiful. You want to see it close up. Travel at the speed of light for the next 2,000 years and you'll get there. It's really pretty. But my point here's the beauty of God's creation. If we're going to talk about important things, you say, well, Paul, what about baptism? Absolutely. What about confession, repentance, and giving, prayer, the Lord's Supper? All those things are important. But are they of any value if the person you're talking to says, well, I'll do that if you like, but actually I don't believe in God at all? You say, well, don't waste your time. Unless a person has faith, everything else is just going through the motions. In Hebrews 11 and verse 6, a passage you're familiar with, without faith it's impossible to please God. But here's the second part that shows us why. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, that he exists, New International Version, and that he is a rewarder or rewards those that seek him. Lots of people believe in God. I believe he exists, but not to the point where they actually trust him with their lives. And so when we think about faith and how critical that is, well, consider a handful of passages. An interesting one is in John chapter 1 and in verse 12, where John records for us, for those that received him have the right to become a child of God, or the children of God, even those that believe on his name. The interesting point, denominational world, you believe, you're a child of God, slam dunk, it's over. That's all you got to do is believe. John records for us, that was just the opening doorway, that it gives you the right to become the child of God. Didn't make you a child of God at that point. It gives you the right to repent, confess, be baptized. Think of other passages that we like in Ephesians chapter 2 and in verses 8 through 9. For by grace have you been saved, how? Through faith. Somebody said, well, I never have believed. Well, let's talk about that. Somebody said, well, I like to be baptized. Well, good, but let's talk about the foundation of this. Because your eternal destiny is bridged by the principle of faith. In Genesis 15:16, Abraham believed God and was reckoned as righteousness. In Habakkuk chapter 2 and other places, we find it in Romans 1:17 and others, the righteous will live by their faith. That's really the key to everything. Do I really believe in God? And I not only believe that He is, but I really trust Him to do whatever He says that He will do. A man brought his son to Jesus, and he said, if, Jesus said, it's not if, nothing's impossible with God, if you believe. And the father said, I do believe. Help thou my unbelief. I'm pretty kind of much, and sort of, or most of the time, except when, and we find ourselves in that kind of a situation that, we do pretty much. Do we trust Him with our life? Do we trust Him with our death? Because faith tested grows stronger, or certainly can, because all of us face pain and fear and disappointment and loss and heartache, and it can challenge a believer's faith. They say, I prayed and God didn't answer. Well, sometimes parents, sometimes you tell your kids no. And if the kid throws a tantrum, you just jerk them out of the frame and say, hold it. When dad says no, the answer is no, I'm willing to listen to you. But don't try to out-argue me. There's a reason for that. And so the part I want us to look at is, what about Job here? What about when he faced absolute disaster? My reason for doing that is, how do we face disaster? Well, he was incredibly good. Job chapter 1, verse 1, depending on your version, I chose for this one, NLT. He was blameless. He feared God, a man of complete integrity. He avoided evil. This was a good dude. Really, really neat. And beside that, not only a good person generally, loving and sacrificial. Job 1:4 talks about his sons, how they would hold a feast, each one on his day. In comparison to Job 3:1, it appears to be on their birthday. So they have birthday celebration, and so you got a lot of kids, there's a lot of celebration. Those of you who have a large family knows how that is. And the neat part, look with me in Job 1 and verse 5. When the days of feasting had completed their cycle, Job would sin and consecrate them, rising up early in the morning and offering burnt offerings according to the number of them all. I want to make sure my kids are okay. And he said, perhaps my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Really a good guy, spiritual minded, wanted to do the right thing, wanted his family to be saved as well. So what happens? Well, you know the story. In one day, he lost everything. And we're not going to, but you can read Job 1, verses 5 through 17. One after another, the servants come. You lost all your oxen, all your camel, all your sheep, all your donkeys, the servants that were with them. 10,000 and more. Your wealth is gone. And then verse 19, and all your children have been killed. All of them. I say that I get goosebumps. Life is a fragile thing. People lose family members in car accidents and cancer and the idea of losing all your children. One child. Glenn and I were talking about that. She's back home there in Tacoma teaching little kids. And she said, that is said to be the most stark, wrenching loss there is, a loss of a child. But anybody that you love. And he lost them all. But then his expression of faith. And we've all read this. And you say, Paul, you get it. Well, I see he had it, but it's bewildering to me. Job in 1:20 through 22, Job arose and tore his robe and shaved his head and fell to the ground and worshiped. New American Standard. And he said, naked came I from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Through all this, Job did not sin or blame God. Seriously, my hair begins to stand up. Paul, you get it, don't you? You've been preaching all these years. I get that he did it. Paul, isn't that you? I said, oh, no, I can't wrap my mind around that. I see that he did. I want to be that kind of person. I just visualize just being crushed. How did he do that? So after that, what could possibly go wrong? Oh, read on. His health was ruined. In Job 2, 7 through 8, sore boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, and he took a potsherd, a piece of broken pottery. He's sitting outside, scraping himself, lancing the boils to relieve the pain as he's sitting among the ashes. Boils are a staph infection. It's transmissible, so he's not around the family. You get to be outside. You get to sit in a dump. Wow. What could possibly go wrong? Well, how about your wife? She loses hope, Job 2:9, and his wife said, do you still hold your integrity? Curse God and die. Just give up. Man, that's an encouraging thing. And we, oh no, well, what's he say? He says, you speak as one of the foolish speak. Shall we accept good and not evil or adversity? And in all this, Job did not sin with his lips. I tell you what, I'm an enthusiastic kind of person naturally. I tend to be high energy and go, 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 go. And I go, but man, when somebody says, oh man, that's a lost cause, that was a crummy thing, that has worthless, you'll never, and it just kind of, air goes out of your balloon. And that's what Mrs. Job did. And so what kind of woman is she? Well, before we judge her too harshly, she's just gone through all of this too. She's lost all her kids, all the wealth, all the social standing, and her husband's health. So she's crushed. I can understand that. Well, what else? Well, you got friends come to encourage you. People say the most well-meaning, thoughtless, stupid, hurtful things. It's better just don't say anything rather than mess it up. Just a handful of things. Eliphaz, one of the friends, they sit around for a week, don't say anything. Man, that's encouraging. Then when they do, they start criticizing him. Eliphaz says, your words have helped the tottering, and you've encouraged the feeble and done all these things, but now it's come to you and you're impatient. I think I'd choke the guy. Impatient. All my kids are dead. I'm in physical disaster. All my finances are gone. And you say, I'm irritable? You have no idea how irritable. Eliphaz, he says, as for me, I'd seek God. Oh man, that's really going to be encouraging. Here's one of the finest guys there are, and this smart aleck is telling him, I think I'd be more serious about spiritual things. Bildad says, well, maybe that's not the issue. If your sons sinned, God delivered them into their sin. Well, maybe it's your kids are all fouled up. That's going to encourage you. Zophar, the other friend, said, if sin's in your hand, put it far away, then you have hope. Man, you guys are worthless. And Eliphaz continues in 15:20, says, the wicked man writhes in pain all his days. So you're feeling so bad. I think the problem is you are a rotten sinner. I don't want to encourage you, but there's the facts of the matter, so cheer up. And he says in 22:5, your wickedness, they have no proof, but they've come to the conclusion, your wickedness is great and your iniquity is without end. Man, you're as fouled up as anybody on earth. And then he just starts making up stuff. You strip men naked. You send widows away empty. So snares around. I got it figured out why you're in such bad shape. Man, you are the second worst person that's ever lived on earth. Man, that's having friends. Don't you just have that warm and fuzzy feeling now? Wow, they've come to cheer me up. What else could possibly go wrong? In Job 7:5, the sleepless nights. I have been allotted months of futility and nights of misery. When I lie down, I think, how long till I get up? And the night drags on, and I toss till dawn. Everybody's had that sometime or another. He said, my body is clothed with worms and scabs. and my skin is broken and festering. Paul, you've gone through that. Oh no, I cannot wrap my mind around that. And then the reality is a roller coaster of faith. Job says in 13:15, though he slay me, yet will I hope in him. You go, huh, yeah. And there's that enduring faith in 1925 and following. He said, I know that my Redeemer lives, and yet he'll take his stand on the earth. And without eyes, I shall see him. You go, wow. That just rings a chord with us. But family and friends, oh man, the guy, it's just, you know, he's nauseating to look at. He's just running sores and this and that, and he won't fess up to any wrong that he might have done. And contrary to that, he has a great attitude in doing right. In Job 31:1, he said, I've made a covenant with my eyes. How can I gaze upon a maiden? I'm not going to have the wrong thoughts. I'm not going to be looking in the wrong ways. And we're familiar in 42:8. He prayed for his friends, and he was blessed abundantly. You go, got it. Yeah, I see he did it. Well, Paul, that's you. You've got it all figured out. If all those things happen to you, man, you're on track. I see he was, but it was beyond me. I would talk to people that would go through tough stuff. Joe and Karen Bartle and a number of others, as they're going through horrendous things, I ask them, how do you do it? And they say, you just hold on to God's hand. I mean, it's so much better than people that don't have God. And I go, huh. And so I hear what they say, and it makes sense. But I felt like I needed a roadmap. And then, John Dorn. A week ago, I was at Chris Spawn's memorial. And I was toward the back there, and people would come by and say hi. And among the people was John Dorn. And John turned the corner and said, hi, Paul. I said, hi, John. And when people are going through tough, I tell people this all the time, when people are going through tough things, you don't ask, how are you? It's tough. I say, how are you doing today? Because each day is a little bit different. And he said, it's a good day. And I said, John, I understand you've just been hammered health-wise. And then he, very open, he shares with me. He said, I've been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. It's just genetic. My body started misinterpreting the code. And then 2 weeks later, brain cancer. I went, wow. I said, John, we're standing here and there's hundreds of people around. I said, John, can I talk to you about this? I would like to understand how you handled what you did and got through it. He said, absolutely. I said, it's going to help me, because I figured one of these days I'm going to be run over by a cement mixer or whatever. And sometime, I mean, day after tomorrow, next year, 2 months from now, 15 years, who knows? Nobody knows. And so I called him and I said, talk to me about that. These are the notes that I took. And I share that to say, Paul, you don't have all the story. Nobody has all the story. But I want to share with you the things that were thunderously important to me. And I'd say, tell me about this. Because he seemed to have a positive attitude. Well, part of the story is, he says, I've always been a glasses half full kind of guy. I try to be upbeat and positive. And so as I thought about this lesson, I just kind of added scriptures in that suggested that kind of attitude that should be of all of us. He said, a merry heart makes a cheerful face. We tend to respond the way we are thinking. Now, the reality is, he didn't just click his heels together and say, woohoo, boy, I've got life-threatening diseases. And no, Sheila Dorn said when he found out he had brain cancer, he cried. Well, that's real. I can identify with that. Basically a positive person, but when things just roll over you, you got to deal with them. And then he said, the doctor originally said I had 12 to 18 months, but that was 4.5 years ago. I tell people, nobody has a date written on the bottom of your foot. I don't care what the doctors say, nobody knows for sure. And John said, I'm not in charge of things, God is. He says, tomorrow the drug could stop working. Or it could be 8 years from now. And I thought, that makes so much sense to me. As we go through life, Paul, how much life do you got? I guarantee you, when I first went to West Campus in Federal Way, Terry Palmer asked me, how long will you stay here? I said, I guarantee you 10 years. Well, that was 33 years ago now. You never know. And I tell people, Paul, what do you guarantee now? I'd say I'm good for another 10 minutes. Anyhow, beyond that, you never know. And that's true for every single person. So some of the things that I appreciated from John Dorn, and this was the blockbuster for me. This one I said, that's what I was looking for. And that's an attitude of selflessness. John said, okay, it's life-threatening, but it was never about me. That blew me away. I said, how can it not be about you? It is lung cancer, it is brain cancer, and you got them both at the same time. He said, it's not about me. And that was stunning. I thought, it's got to be about you. He said, it's not about me. It's always been Lisa and the kids. Wow. I said, that's it. Let each one count one another more important than himself. We go through all the stuff, but that's not the biggest deal. It's the people around us. That was the kicker for me. I said, that's the thing that I cherished, I needed to hear. That's how you don't dwell on what's happening, but how's it affecting others? The big picture, as I entitled it, he says, why I'm not worried about me is we are all going to end by car accident or aneurysm. I mean, unless the Lord comes, right? Everybody's got a date out there somewhere or another. So it's not if, it's when. It's just going to be. And once you accept that, that's true enough. And then the idea of balance. To keep from being overwhelmed, focus on one thing at a time. And I like that idea, Proverbs 4:25. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Yeah, I'm a little ADHD, squirrel. I get distracted by things. Rather than say, here's the most important thing, I can do that today. Tomorrow we're going to have to take care of tomorrow, but here I can make some preparation, but I need to focus on today. And that idea of peace. And John said, there's no use worrying about tomorrow or 3 weeks from now. I live for today, and I plan for tomorrow. I thought, he's saying the things we always say. We think, yeah, that's a nice principle. He said, that's really the pathway. That's how you do it. That it's not, I'm worried about what am I going to eat and what am I going to wear and what's my health going to be like and what's the government going to do. I have no idea. I'm not in control of those things. God is. But seek ye first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. And then that element of hope. He said, I keep praying and hoping, which would be natural. 1 Thessalonians 5:17, pray without ceasing. And that should be true for all of us, but that's part of the pathway. And then he said, the reality is, where else would I go? And I thought, well, yeah, I mean, you can't go to the BECU credit union and ask them advice. They don't know what to do. You can't go to the, Tacoma Community Center. They don't have the answers. God does. And our days are really like a shadow, just lasts that long. Ecclesiastes 6 and verse 12. And then he said this that I cherish. The end will be whatever it will be. You'll be surprised at how strong you actually are when you face it. I went, huh. I thought, I could do that. That's what he did is he put the pieces of the puzzle together because he's living it. And I go, wow, I can share that with people. He said, you have two choices. You can live life the best you can or crawl into a hole and give up. And I thought, that's right. Isn't that right? I mean, there's one or the other. You're going to have a hopeful attitude or just, well, I'm just a mess. And somebody's going to have to scrape me off the pavement. And so we talked to Freeman C. last week because Freeman's dealing with cancer and spots on his lung. But the reality is, what are you going to do? He said, boy, you go into these cancer treatment places, and he said, you can see the people that don't have any hope. And I don't know the right numbers. I said, what percentage of the people do you feel have no hope? He said, 85%. I said, whoa. But think of what it's like. If there's no hope, there's nothing to look forward to, nothing positive. Wow, how desolate that would be. And here's what John said in looking at this life. He said, I'm blessed to have good friends. I'm blessed to have family that's faithful. I can't ask for anything more. I went, phew. Blew me away. Blew me away. I thought, that's really it. We're going home, but in the meantime, you're surrounded by people that love you. But that's always true. And it can be true for me and you. As we come down toward the end, I came across this illustration just yesterday. Years ago, there was this great, incredibly talented tightrope walker. He's a French guy, and Francois, blah, 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 but he took on the American name Charles Blondin. He was blonde. 5'4", 140 pounds, blonde hair, blue eyes. But man, could he balance. You're looking at him doing a headstand on a tightrope. He could do this on the Niagara Falls. I tell you, I can walk a tightrope. I can walk it for 1,000 feet. Where? Well, as long as you keep it on the ground, I can just walk along the thing. But man, you put it 1 foot off the ground, I can't do it. Well, this guy was so. I punched the wrong button. Now I wonder how I can get out of that. Okay, they said what I can do is a touch screen. Okay. He could walk across the tightrope, stretch across Niagara Falls, joining U.S. and Canada backwards, go forwards on the tightrope, pushing a wheelbarrow. He could do it blindfolded. But the biggest of all was he said, I can cross Niagara Falls with somebody on my back. He put out a reward. He said, some guy showed up and looked at Niagara Falls and looked at the rope and said, it's a 2-inch hemp rope. And it was, so it didn't have too much sway, it was fastened laterally to points to minimize the drift. His friend and manager was the only one that took it up. He said, okay, now here's the deal. You get on my back. Do not, if you feel out of balance, do not try to rebalance yourself. You have to place your whole hope and your whole trust in me. Guy says, okay. Gets on his back. They start across. But it doesn't go as easily as planned. They get the first 300 feet. And now you got 1,000 feet to cross the Grand Niagara Falls. I wasn't Grand Canyon, that'd be a little bit further. And the tightrope walker, Blondin, says, I've got to stop. You've got to get off my back. I've got to rest. We're going to sit on the wire here. And so the guy holding on to Blondin needs 2 minutes. All right, now you get back onto Blondin's back. He goes another 300 feet. Now you're about halfway across. And he said, I got to rest again. How many people here, if you had a reward of $10,000, would take a ride on that guy's back across Niagara Falls? No. Paul, how about $1 million? I don't care if you offer $1 billion. I'm not doing it. They get about halfway across, and one of the stabilizing ropes snap. And he says, he tells the guy on his back, he said, now here's the deal. You've got to trust me. You've got to put your life in my hands. I'm going to have to run across the rope. If you don't trust me, and you do anything, we will both die. He has to sprint just another 30 feet till they get to a lateral supporting rope, and they get to the other side. You say, Paul, is that real? That is absolutely real. Test it. You can look it up. Attested to by the Smithsonian, by History.com, New York Times, and thousands of people witnessed it. Why? He crossed the Niagara 300 times. It's believable. But would you trust him to climb on his back? No. See, the idea, I believe, but I don't trust. I might be the one. Now, here's where we wrap up. We must place our lives in God's hands. He has carried many people across that great divide. Amen. And he hasn't lost anyone yet. And so are you ready to make that commitment to God? Because that's what we're doing. We're putting our life in his hands and trusting him to do what is very best. We're going to be singing this invitation song, Lord, I'm Coming Home. If you'd like to respond in any way, if you say, I need to be baptized into Christ, I want to start that life. I do believe in him, willing to repent of my sins and confess his name. Or say, I've been struggling, I could use some prayers and some encouragement. Let's be standing and sing song number 288, Lord, I'm Coming Home.